Uh, my name is Arman. My partner is Josh. This is our final sprint video, end of quarter sprint video for Pyrus in the spring of 2018. So in sprint zero, we created a timeline for the rest of the quarter. We had a goal to write a paper or write a few drafts of a paper initially, and we revised it throughout the quarter. But initially, we set a timeline so that we were able to set deadlines and schedule our time more effectively because we had several goals of going to Kai and preparing for that, as well as like having a, a certain ending point for our project at the end of the quarter. So we created the timeline, and then we started a draft of our Kai SRC poster presentation, and started our first iterations of getting feedback. And then we ran a pilot study with 2 users where we were testing whether those users would follow a problem-solving process, as well as whether there was any transfer of learning in the process of using Pyrus. The pilot study was really informative because we realized that transfer was not something we had designed for and not something that we saw in our outcomes. Um, then in Sprint 1, we continued refining our SRC poster and slides, and we practiced our presentation of both the poster and slides with the HCI community. And on the more research side, rather than preparing for SRC, we started filling in sections 1 through 6 and 10 through 16 of the practical research canvas. In Sprint 2, we went to Kai. There we practiced answering difficult questions. Though in the actual competition we didn't get asked many, we were prepared with many of the potential pitfalls of our project, and we received a lot of good feedback. We iterated on our arguments and presentations several times in Kai, and this was really helpful to scope our project and to see where we were trying to contribute, or articulate where we were trying to contribute. Finally, when we came back from Kai, we decided to pivot to a study design that was based on a boot camp. And we began preparing for that boot camp by writing some procedures, just trying to understand who our audience was, whether we should change our system to be in C++ because we were serving 211 students, and specifically what kind of questions we would be giving them.
In Sprint 3, we finished our preparations for the first boot camp, and we ran our first boot camp. And we went over some of the changes that we would need to make for the next one. Specifically, during the first boot camp, we ran into a lot of technical issues. We didn't anticipate that all of the students would finish all of the problems so quickly, and so we had to scramble to make sure that we had enough work for them, and that caused a lot of confusion and sort of like last minute changing. And one thing that we wanted to make sure that we had control over during the next boot camp was that we knew exactly what people would be working on and for how long. And so this boot camp was we got a lot of valuable information out of it and valuable feedback, and it really helped us to plan our next boot camp. And so that's what we did for Sprint 4. So during this sprint, we implemented a lot of the changes that we wanted to make to our bootcamp study design. This included not only changing the actual problems that we had students complete, but also changing some of the setup between study and control. We ran that second boot camp, and we debriefed after that as well. And then after that boot camp, we began the process of documenting Pyrus. So both on the technology side and on the research side. And then for Sprint 5, this past week, we've been winding down the project, and we've been talking about our plans to continue working over the summer. So some of those plans include right now, or at least within the next week or so, we want to start looking at the data, start analyzing the data, because we anticipate that that's going to be kind of the big hurdle that we need to leap over before we can start doing any of the other things. And so this includes going back over logs, writing scripts to quantize those, and then also actually looking at the recordings that we collected, both with interviews and for the actual working sections of the study. Um, and then another thing that we're working on right now is reworking some of our canvas. So that's part of the documentation process for Pyrus, is just putting down everything that we know right now into our canvases to make sure it's up to date. And then later on in the summer, closer to September, we're going to be starting the process of writing the paper that we will hopefully eventually submit to Kai.